That's easy to say. We all look at this as if, we're all in God and all we do is all right. That it's by divine order that we show up. And so we get to this point where we forgive ourselves for whatever it is that we're going through. But at the same time, I started thinking about maybe I'm looking at this all wrong. So I wanted to kind of talk about it for a minute. As it relates to our words. Now, first off, we talk about this impeccability of our words, letting your word have honor, truth, substance. Let yourself speak your truth. But I want to ask you, who in here knows how much of our communication is actually the words that we say? Or taken another way, from a different perspective, how much of our communication is the nonverbal things?
80%.
93% is nonverbal. So that means only 7% of what we're communicating one to another is actually the words that come out of our mouths. So we say things with our expressions, with our body language, with our attentiveness. All of those things communicate so much more than any of the things that we ever say. So when I talk about this idea of letting your words be impeccable, if we start talking about let our communication be impeccable, then that means that we then need to step back and do what? We got to check ourselves, right? So I started thinking, what does this mean for me? There is this wonderful thing. Last year, let me since Tony is here now, let me relate this to you guys. Last year, I over the summer was taking a course in Tai Chi, and it was so interesting because as I went through my class in Tai Chi, all of the movements that they do are so exact and so precise. Each one of them has meaning. So whether it's that we're lifting our foot and then shifting our weight before we step over, even that has its meaning. The hand gestures have their meaning. All of those things have their meaning. Now, a good teacher, it says, teaches us how to do things. And as we learn these things, it becomes second nature for us. I find this fascinating because I'm always this free spirit. I like to just do me. Now, in doing me, I've also recognized that in the process of my truth, I've learned through A Course in Miracles that an untrained mind, it says, can accomplish nothing. So if I am involved in a course in mind training, I realize that my truth might change as my training changes. Y'all follow me? So as I learn something different, that means I do something different. So if I am sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, I'm this free spirit, in the fact that I am learning movements and gestures and things that somehow are different, it's kind of like learning how to make a recipe, or something else that requires that we follow directions or follow some other path that somebody has laid for us. I'll tell you, because I'm jumping around for a minute, but it's going to come together in a second. Because as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about all the times where I've kind of started doing stuff, and I'm working on something and I'm creating something. My mother used to do this. My mother used to love to create dishes. And we would look at it and we would call it concoction number 24. Concoction number 210. So when you're eating something and you're sitting there and you're looking at this stuff and you're wondering what the heck it is, it's her own concoction. But what has happened throughout time is that people have concocted things, and then when it turns out right, then they start to leave the breadcrumbs along the path by creating recipes or something that says if you do A, B, and C, all of this will come together to create that. And it seems to work every time. There is a comfort in learning the steps to something And then once you perfect it, you're able to lose yourself in the process. I met this guy who told me one time that there were basically 3 types of people in the world. He said, there are those couch potato people that, you know, are content to just sit there on their couch and watch life go by. He said, then there are the followers who will get out there and, you know, they'll go and they'll do something that they've seen other people do. You know, kind of like those, I like to go on these hiking things. Y'all know, like, I like to go hiking. I think hiking is wonderful, but I usually stay on the path. It's safer. You know, you don't run into snakes and all of that stuff. I mean, I know I'm here in Ohio, but I have seen a snake before. I've seen things that kind of scare the heck out of me. So I stay upon the path that's cut for me. And then there are those people that are trailblazers, who go places that nobody else has gone, and then they cut the path in order for those of us who come behind it to follow. Now, it's interesting because life is this cyclical process, and no matter how often people go along and cut a trail, tramp over it, and all that other stuff, life seems to happen. All this rain comes down, the grasses grow, and what you thought was a path is now grown over. And sometimes we go and we follow them by memory. That's what I do through the woods by my dad's house. I don't know what happened to that trail we used to have, but it disappeared, and I used to go through there and think, it's somewhere along this way. So now there are so many people who have come before us who have done that exact same thing, who have cut a trail for us, or who have found movements that have meaning, and they try to teach those to us. It's like the process of meditation that we go through. We come in here, we sit, and the practice of meditation, while we're in it and we're learning, we're sitting there questioning whether or not it is something that we should do, that we ought to do. All of this stuff, our mind goes on. But then at some point in the practice, we lose ourselves to the process. Now, how does this relate to impeccability? It was interesting because as I started thinking about this impeccability idea, I started to think about it from a different perspective. What I found is that as I think about the process that I go through, even to come up here and talk to you, it's kind of like this thing that I might get myself confused if I think that what I do, what we do, is all about me. Y'all don't feel me yet. Wait a minute. Let me see if I can put it a different way. If I thought Sandra was coming in here and Sandra was bringing some kind of divine information to share with you, then I would have confusion. Because what I would be about was about my ego's need to say that Sandra is imparting some information to you. And I'm not into trying to stroke my ego. I know it may seem like that sometimes, but really it's like, that's a useless pursuit. Because if it's all about Sandra, you know how we do. We always think that, you know, this is new, this is our stuff. You know, nobody's heard of it. Ooh, I got something good I can go share, you know. We run out thinking that there's something new. And really, there's nothing new under the sun. No matter what you are going through, somebody has already been through it. So if it's your pain, somebody's already experienced that pain. If it is joy or heartache or the feeling of loss or feelings of fear, somebody has already been through it. I know you don't want to believe it because we want to personalize it. We want to take it as if it's ours. Darn it. And then we think, oh, you know what? Nobody has ever felt this before. But the truth of the matter is that everything that we're doing here has already been done. Let me give y'all an example, because I'm getting older. Y'all know I'm menopausal now, right? Y'all know that. You say you figured it out. Is it because I'm forgetting stuff? No.
I do it too, that's all. We all do.
So baby babies are born, right? And somewhere along the line, they start to, coo and do the little noises they do, right? Right on time, right? It's as if they've got a little chart that tells you age-appropriate behavior, because toddlers and babies do stuff according to where they are in their development, right? You've seen this before. They turn into toddlers, then little kids, then adolescents, then teenagers. Y'all familiar with this process? Yeah. All of us go through it. And yet and still, for some reason, when we're there, we think this is brand new. Teenagers lie to their parents and think like, ooh, this is the first time this has ever happened, right? As young adults, we start feeling ourselves, start smelling our own stuff, and somehow we think we're smarter than our parents are at a particular age, and that's what we do. It's not new. And so we go through this process, and even as I get older, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm thinking to myself, I'm aging, right? I know I'm aging, and it's not new. And I see that, oh my gosh, my mother passed when she was in her 50s, and I'm like in my 50s now. And so I'm looking at it and I'm thinking like, okay, I don't have to do it the same way. I don't have to look at my life as limited in the same way. But I realize that part of the process, if I keep on living, then certain things are going to start happening. This guy told me last week, he says, I can tell your age by looking at your elbow. Ooh. And I'm thinking like, really? I thought it was such a funny thing. But there is this whole thing, and I'm thinking like, okay, now that my elbows look soft, it's like, ooh, that's the new sexy for me, So it becomes this thing of recognizing that all of this stuff, if I keep on living, there are going to be certain things that are going to happen to me. And true enough, if you keep on living, one day you're going to meet your day with death. It's part of the process. Sometimes if we live long enough, we start to forget stuff. We even forget our own names, right? Yeah, and it's so funny because, I can have, I heard this little thing on the radio on the way over here. They say, yeah, you don't introduce people sometimes because when you run into them, you know them. You've known them forever and you just forget who they are. It's part of what we do. And so it becomes this thing of just kind of like relaxing and figuring out that you are just perfectly as you're supposed to be. And it's not new. And so I can sit here and I can think that this is Sandra and this is Sandra's stuff and this is Sandra's pain. But really it's a shared and collective thing. And so if I'm about the business of what Spirit is about, then I need to bring my truth, my unadulterated truth through the situation, and recognize that as I share my truth, it may benefit somebody else because we're all walking the same path that is this life that we're living. Really? And so as I think about this, I start thinking about it in the sense that this is about something greater than just me in this moment. It's about something bigger than who I am. It's about Spirit living its life through me. And so it becomes about just recognizing that at every moment, my life is a blessing to bless somebody else's. So as I started to think about this in a different terms, I started thinking, okay, so this is not about me, right? I get up here and I talk. Now think about it in this way. If you're walking with somebody and they've got a candle, and the candle is kind of illuminating the room so that you can see, you think like, oh, it's so wonderful that they're sharing that light with me. But now, do you get that person confused and think that they are the light just because they brought the light? if somebody pulls out their cell phone and they flash the light for you, and now of course you can see better, do you get it confused and think that they are the light or that they're providing the light? And so sometimes we think that when people bring ideas and messages to us and we get some information that provides some insight into what we're going through, sometimes we get confused and think that that person is the light rather than providing the light. Is a light bulb the light, or is it a vehicle for light? You see, all of us are here to do that same thing for one another, to help provide some light so that we might get some insight into our lives. And so when we start to think about it from that perspective, then it's bigger than who we are. So I was thinking about it in terms of this idea when I went back to the Tai Chi class. That idea of the mastery that comes through the practice of what it is that we're doing. I was thinking about it because I was thinking, you know, I haven't been to Tai Chi this year, you know. Not because I don't appreciate it, not because I thought it was difficult or anything. I stopped going. And then I thought about, you know, like, well, I dance anyway. I dance all the time. But then I thought, there are certain things that we do that we lose ourselves to in the process. And so what is it that you lose yourself into doing? I don't know about y'all, but I used to, I grew up with chores. Yeah, y'all know a little bit about chores.
Yes.
And one of the things that I had to do in the evening time was wash dishes. Now, washing dishes is nothing glamorous or anything like that. It's not even something to look forward to. It is a chore, and so by definition, a chore is something that you know, kind of don't like to do. But now I'll tell you, it was something wonderful about that process for me, because I would get in the kitchen, and if I could get everybody out of the kitchen, I could lose myself in the doing of the activity. So for me, washing dishes was even better than going in the closet and sitting. It became this thing that I did, this flow that I had. I've also had that flow and that experience with other folks when you know that you're about a task, and that task you start to do it, whatever it is, and you lose yourself to it. It becomes not just something that you're doing in the moment, but it becomes a bigger picture. You guys, when it's all about you and only about you, what we do is we kind of like create boundaries in which the thing that we're doing exists. But when we start to look at it as this is spirit working, and that this is spirit's doing through me, then we magnify it and grow it into something much bigger. So the movement becomes not just a movement of my body, but a movement that creates energy that other people also feel. Have you ever felt the synergy and the energy of a combined group of folks? Y'all, here, I'll tell you, one time I went to a Parliament Funkadelic concert. Did I ever tell y'all about this? Man, Roger Troutman, he could put you into a hypnotic state, you know. We all out there and we're, you know, jamming with the thing, and all the music is pumping, and then of course they're gonna tell you like this is it, this is the last song, and they're gonna go off the stage. And then here they come back out, you know, like they go back there and sorry I'm telling y'all this, but they go back there and smoke a couple more joints, and then they come back out, and then they start again, and it's like it's grooving, and you've got the audience and you've got the performers. And there's this symbiotic relationship that's going on in between the audience and the people that are watching. And the feeling is just, I mean, it's like you could take it and you can just jar it because it's so intense. It's just so intense. And then all of a sudden I kind of turned my gaze to look at somebody else to see if they were enjoying it as much as I am. And it's almost like I felt something cut through the atmosphere, as if you could just take it and just recognize that there is an energy and a sensation to that. It's bigger than any one person. I mean, and that's the same thing that's true, and that's that synergy that's created when we hear somebody good speaking, or when we witness something that is just moves our hearts. It's that same kind of energy. And it's not about any one person, it's about that collective together. And so what I come here to talk about and wanted to share with you is that the journey, the job, all the things that you're doing is not just about you alone, not just about what you're doing. If you let not only your words but your actions be impeccable, then you'll create that same kind of synergy and energy that moves things. And it is bigger than just any one thing that you thought you were about. It becomes a greater something that is about Spirit using you. And I love that. Because at some point, we have to recognize that Spirit has to be expressed. It cannot not be expressed. And so as we recognize Spirit's desire to express itself, it comes and it gives us the challenges, the things that we're going to grow through in order for us to share that with those that are around us, in order for us to bless somebody else with the things that we've gone through. So if you have something that you've gone through, whether it's a broken relationship or cancer or the loss of a job, you have the responsibility to bear witness to others, to say that yes, you may be in the midst of some darkness, but you're going to make it through the light, because light surely comes. And if you are the person that strikes the match so that other people can see, don't get it confused thinking that you're the light. You are simply doing what you are here to do. Like all of us are here to do what we're to do. Just because I pull out my flashlight and provide illumination, it does not mean that I am the light. It means that I am providing it. And when you're not doing what you're supposed to do, guess what? You'll be like that couch potato that guy was talking about. You're sitting back and you're observing life as it goes on without actively taking part in it. It is up to each of us to recognize that we are there to be that torch burner, to provide light where there was none before. And so when you start to let your actions be representative of what you know you're here for, when you let Spirit show through you, when you show up, half the time we don't even show up. And why? When I was in Seattle, back up for a second. When I was in Seattle, my aunt is taking care of this man who is in a senior living facility. And so every morning we would walk down to this place, and it was a nice assisted living community. It was out on the water, and you would see the little seagulls and everything. And, every morning everybody gets up and they go down to breakfast, and then after breakfast they go back to their rooms, and then they go down it was just such a nice facility. And so I'm in there, we were walking down every day to go down and have lunch with Uncle Bert. And one particular day, there was a lady, the different older ladies used to come and sit with us in the morning. And there was this lady who came, and she was sitting next to me. And so I said to her as we were getting ready to go, I was like, well, have a nice day. Or have a good day. And she was like, well, what's good about it? And I was thinking, well, the fact that you're alive, right? And she's like, it's the same as yesterday, and the day before, and last month, and the year before that. I've been in this place for 20 years. And for her, it was the repetition of the thing. And I remember the next day when I went and I asked Uncle Bert, who was in his 90s, I asked Uncle Bert, I said, the little side point is that Uncle Bert is really well off, got a lot of money, and I think it's like $6,000 a month just to live in this place. And I asked Uncle Bert, I said, well, if you were rich, what would you do? And he says, I'd travel. And I was like, well, why don't you? And he says, well, I can't. And I'm thinking, well, why not? And I guess, the response would be, well, I really can't even wipe my own butt, or, I need help getting dressed at this point. And so I started thinking about this in terms of my life. Why? If you are not doing the things that make you happy right now when you're able, why not? Or finding the things that make you happy where you are and in the circumstances that you are in. What can you do right now? What's the limits that you place on yourself right now? Are you able to shine a light and just refuse to do so? At some point you won't be able to light it anymore, right? I don't know. But live in the moment and to the expanse of what you have, what your abilities are. Fill up the space that you're in. Fill it up and light it up wherever it is. Let your actions be impeccable. All right, so pray with me, you guys. I'm not even going to check to see what all I missed out on because I know I didn't even go on script. So, dear God, in this moment, we just recognize you as all there is. God, you are every challenge that we will meet. I already see it there. You are every blessing that we receive. I already know that is true. So God, I'm just thanking you for showing up in our lives right now as whatever it is that we need or desire. God, I thank you that we see that everything that we go through is a chance for us to grow through it and to grow into a bigger self than what we realized was possible. God, let us fill out our space and fill out our days of our lives. And God, as we do that, allow us to be a blessing for someone else. I give thanks for each of us in our own perspectives and in our own stuff. Thank you. And as we see the blessings in our lives, God, help us to show others the blessings in theirs. I accept it, God, knowing that it's done. Knowing that we find joy, peace, and happiness right where we are. It's done. And I just let it go, knowing that it's done. And so it is. Amen. Amen.